Speed, marker, and action.
This podcast is being recorded at the Motion Picture Institute, the oldest film school in Michigan, training the next generation of filmmakers today. Check out the website motionpicture.edu and schedule a tour now. All right, and welcome back to the show. Today I have a very exciting guest, Jeremy Marble. Has been a prominent figure in the video production industry for 20 years, earning 10 Emmy Awards for his work as a cinematographer, editor, and producer. After relocating to Las Vegas post-college, he expanded his skills by hosting his own TV show, working in top casinos, and producing corporate videos for major companies such as STRYKER and US Foods. Upon returning to Michigan, Jeremy enrolled and graduated from MPI in 2014 and began his career in Michigan. Working briefly in the auto industry and eventually becoming a video journalist to MLive, he currently serves as a Senior Multimedia News Producer at the University of Michigan, where he produces video content showcasing the university's research, experts, podcasts, and video series. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks for having me.
And without further ado, let's talk motion picture. Yeah, it is. It's not every day you get to speak to someone who's won 10 Emmys. Yeah, let's bring her out. Good golly.
There you go.
Man, that's pretty. Yeah, I guess my first question is, when you win one of these, what is that feeling? Because you've won 10 now.
Mm-hmm.
What is the feeling when you first win an Emmy feel like as a creative? Is it validating?
It's very validating. It's also like you realize the journey that it took to get there, because just getting nominated is really tough. That's a process in its own. You also have to realize the Emmys, unfortunately, are all about money. So just getting an Emmy requires you to become a member. That costs money. You have to pay per submission, per person. So just by submitting your project, that could be $1,000. And so, it's a journey. And when you win, you hear that they announce the title of your video first, and then they say your name. So you're just waiting to hear your title, not your name, your title. So if your title starts with the or a or anything, and you have a list, so you're watching who's you're up against, and you're just waiting to hear those first three words, and then you do, and you're just like, oh crap, now I gotta go up there.
And you prepared a speech?
And yeah, prepare a speech. Some people, they do a very long speech. Most people are just like, all right, I'm done. Like, hurry up. On to the next one.
Do they play the music at the end of the speech to speed the process up?
No, very rarely will they show you off, but there is times where they're like, all right, come on, move along. But, you're humbled, and it's an honor to win it. And for all the ones I have won, there's almost the exact same amount that I didn't win. There's years where I didn't get nominated at all. And, you think well, I had these great projects. Why didn't they win? But you don't really ever know. The process is sometimes when you see the winners, you're like, really? That's the one that won? These are mainly for, at least before streaming, these were all broadcasts. So if before YouTube, you couldn't win an Emmy unless you were affiliated with some sort of broadcast, whether it be, radio or TV, some sort of video broadcast company. So then when YouTube came out, they, allowed people that aren't affiliated with broadcast to submit Emmys. So most of the Emmys are now hosted on YouTube. They're not, on a local channel news site. So it gives a lot more opportunities to content creators.
So I got so many more questions. It's just so distracting. I guess the thing is, when you win an Emmy, especially because if you can help distinguish the difference in the Emmy you've won compared to what most people are familiar with the Emmys, because this isn't attached to the narrative and stuff like that.
Correct. So these are regional Emmys. So every state has its own Emmy region, So this is I forget what it stands for. It's National Association of something Michigan Television. And, every state has some capacity of that. Whereas, the televised big Emmys, those are almost totally different because, how can Game of Thrones win an Emmy when it's not anything to do with news or broadcast or anything? So it's a totally different, ball game. But
So from what I understand with the Emmys, when you win an Emmy as an actor or as a creative of some sort, it opens more doors. It kind of like allows you to get like a higher rate and so forth. What doors open for you at this level once you win an Emmy? Like what changes for you work-wise?
I mean, when I'm looking for a job, which luckily I'm not, that definitely helps, but it can be a hindrance because people see, oh, this guy's won all these Emmys. We can't afford him.
Gotcha.
We're not even going to look at his resume. He's, so that's, not very likely, but it has happened. I have had interviews when I was looking for the job that I have now. And they still gave me the interview where they're like, hey, look, we can't afford an Emmy winner, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just curious because I'm like, that's usually from what I hear, like that when an actor wins an Oscar or something, they're like, oh boy.
I mean, that's totally different. That's like the top peak of their craft.
Correct.
Emmy's a little bit different. Some people, they don't even, one person got Grammys mixed up with Emmys. They're like, so you're like a musician and you want, I'm like, what? They're for music, right? Like, no, you're thinking of Grammys. I didn't win a Grammy.
I mean, this is still pretty sick. And it's got weights. For anyone who's like watching or listening, it's actually, I always assumed they were light. I didn't think they were actually like had weight. And that's interesting. Yeah, it's I don't, how much would Americans use? Pounds, right?
Yes.
This would be, maybe 3-4 pounds?
Maybe, yeah, 3-4 pounds.
So it's just interesting to like be in the presence of something like this because at the end of the day, in my own experience, there seems to be two school of thoughts when it comes to creatives. The ones who just want to have a career, they want to like make a living and they want to get through it and just express themselves and contribute. And then they are like the fame chasers, right? And those are like always the weird ones that stick out to me where I'm like, what are you doing this for? Come on. All of us kind of just want to do the same thing. We just want to contribute overall. And I have a own personal qualm with awards because I'm like, do you do it for the award or should awards be a reward, right? You kind of like, that's why my first question was, is it validating? Because I myself am in the pursuit of getting my work out there. And what happens when that day comes and it gets acknowledged, recognized, and someone feels like, oh, this has to be commended. And then does that validate my work or is just putting my work out there on my own terms, does that feel validating enough? I mean, you've made some incredible stuff. The stuff that you sent me, I was like, man, it's actually really cool.
Thanks.
And would you feel just as good about it if you didn't get the Emmy noms?
Yeah, the Emmys were just kind of a fluke because I was at MLive, which they took over a bunch of newspapers. There, so it was like Ann Arbor News. There was Muskegon. There was Lansing Journal. Basically, a company came and bought all these newspaper companies, and they turned it into a news organization. So that's sort of the way that you can get into the Emmys is because you're news. And they recently had started they recently started their own video team. And that's how I got brought on board from the very beginning. And my boss at the time, he had won an Emmy, and he was like, we're going to do work that's going to be good enough for us to win an Emmy. Now, unfortunately, we didn't do any of that level of work while he was there. So
awesome.
As soon as he left, we won 4 Emmys.
Jeez.
But
R.I.P.
yeah. But the one of the biggest reasons we won those Emmys is our company applied for a Google grant for news companies, and so we got a bunch of money, and we basically stopped our day-to-day job, and for 4 months we created 6 mini documentaries, and we got to actually just sit and focus on them and not have to do your day-to-day grind, and so that's why we won 4 out of the 6 videos that we produced because they were just really highly produced, polished, and they were impactful. They weren't. They dealt with things going on in Michigan that were relevant and, impacting a lot of people.
Would this be the PFAS?
PFAS, yes.
PFAS.
I can't pronounce what it stands for, but it's like, I won't even attempt it. But it's a very long scientific word, and it's the awful plastic type chemicals that are unfortunately in all of us to some extent.
Yeah, the video was really like terrifying.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, we went to that poor family's, house, this little boy. They have well water. I can't remember where they live, but his PFAS count was like 5 million times like what it should be. It was, the kid was fine like at that age, but his parents were wondering like, we don't know what this is gonna do when he gets older. So, we tackle those tough,
Yeah, I will put links if you're comfortable. I'll put links to all this stuff.
Yeah,
and
I can provide you more too.
People can check it out. It's really informative. You had another one about like the Michigan bottle bill.
That one was really cool. We really got to dive into, going to a bottle return place.
Yeah.
That was cool.
I mean, I didn't really expect there was so much politics in bottles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of it's money.
And for anyone listening who doesn't understand, Michigan has a bottle bill that gets you a 10 cents return on cans and bottles.
Yeah.
And you have to go to like a local store, like a Meijer or a Walmart to get them recycled. But there's like an entire scandal on whether it's like legit, like the cost for it. It's all, it's messy.
Yeah.
It was very informative. I was like, interesting. And I, for one, have qualms with recycling because a lot of it is hogwash.
Well, only 15% of what gets recycled is actually recycled.
Which is like preposterous.
Yeah. So it's just an act of futility.
But yeah, so you've made like incredible work. And I guess when you're going out, because you're a creative and you have these skills and you guys got this grant and you make these videos, when you're targeting these like subject matters, what is it? Because I see here with like the Emmy, it says societal concerns. So that's what you guys were nominated under.
That's what I was, yes.
So does the Emmys like release like a list of categories and then you try make work to fit the categories?
Correct.
Gotcha.
So the way it's broken up is there's like news in the sense of like you're watching it on the news, like it's breaking news, or there's informative news. So whenever there's unfortunately a tragedy, that's more breaking news or news coverage. So there's a whole different category. There's almost two types, two big blocks. There's that type where it's news coverage, or the stuff that I mainly am going to do are informative news. So like this, work was societal concerns because I did this project on how AI can impact society, but it's not breaking news,
Yeah, it's like a little like think piece.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. Let's reel back with the time then, the wheel of time. You go to Las Vegas.
Yeah, after college.
And you did a bunch of like work there.
Yeah.
Kind of like fine tuning your skills. What was the necessity or the need to go to film school? Because you moved back here and you went to the Motion Picture Institute.
Right. Well, moving back here, I didn't have a job. We actually sold our house. The first buyer paid cash.
Damn.
And they were like,
congrats.
Yeah, it was like actually our realtor, she said, I got good news and bad news. The good news is your house sold cash. The bad news is they want you out in 2 weeks. That's quit your job and move.
Damn.
And we didn't know where we were going to move. There was, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I was thinking about going back there because I love visiting there. Glad I didn't, but it worked out great here. But I also lived in Grand Rapids, so I was thinking about going back to Grand Rapids. But instead, we came home because we have family here and had a place, to stay and think what we were going to do. And my friend, Noah, he found MPI. And he's like, hey, this is like a 1-year film school. Like, why don't we both do it? I'm like, screw it. I'm going to go back to film school.
On a dare.
And I'd been, a professional for 10 years. And
that's why it's so bizarre to me.
But I learned a ton. I learned a ton being here. And, the way it was structured is like, okay, not only am I going to learn stuff, like I didn't really need to learn editing. I knew that pretty well. But obviously, I can always learn more in lighting. You know, you can always learn more. And I liked what you walked away with, which was like a short film, because I was going the director route. So I walked out with a short film and networking, and you have access to rental. You know, you can rent gear, and you're part of this like cool tribe. You know, like
I'm so glad.
like,
you
hey,
said
did you go
that.
to MPI? Like, I did. Like,
that is
it's
really
cool.
is. It's like a little status.
Yeah.
It's a little thing. It's our thing.
Mm-hmm.
It fascinated me because I went to MPI, and when I was here as a student, there was a strange, like there was almost like a counterculture about what I believe people who didn't really see what the value of this place was. And they, in a weird way, they almost felt like they weren't getting their money's worth. And I found that very fascinating because I'm like, it's what you put into it. And a lot of these people were just, self-entitled.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear someone who had a 10-year career, someone who was like a legit professional, and no arguments, didn't necessarily have to go to film school. You still went to one and you were able to reap more benefit out of it. I think that the whole philosophy of you can always learn more, I think that's the key to success in any field, specifically film. Like you're like the expert in AI right now. Like it changes.
You have to be. And that's something we can get into later, but
you have to be above the change, or you get swept away.
You got to ride the change. Bare minimum, you have to acknowledge it and understand it. It's funny. I remember there were kids who were like at MPI, and they'd be like, "My mom and dad are just making me come here."
Yeah, so weird.
I'm like, all right, man.
I mean, yeah. For anyone listening, like it's with film school. I mean, I've said this before. It's like I had no intention of going to film school. My mother actually kind of like forced me into this because I wanted to be a filmmaker, but I was like, And she's the one who made me go to the school, and I went to the auditions here at MPI as an actor.
Oh, cool.
And I got to work with some of the students, and I got to see firsthand like what the experience was like here. And I was like, oh, this is done very different from what I was told film school was. MPI is a very different type of film school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I almost want to be in. And it's funny that you said tribe. I was like,
Yeah.
I want to be in on the tribe. And I got to learn a lot. And for someone like you, I guess the biggest takeaway you got from MPI, if you could break that down for me, that then played into your career. Because what's fascinating to me is you didn't stick with like narrative. You went into the documentary-esque, informative route.
I needed a job.
There we go.
No, I did freelance after MPI, and that worked well for a while. I was actually, there's a studio right down the road. I can't even remember the name. They're actually a marketing company that do the brochures for GM, and they have this big, massive studio. And I got a freelance gig with them it was a whole year, so it was, like having a job, but not. And they with all the electric vehicles coming out of that time, the car salesman, sales force, they couldn't sell these cars because they didn't know how they worked. Like customers were coming in with more knowledge of these electric vehicles than, the car sellers. So our job was to like show in-vehicle technology, IVT as they call it. So we would take turns being hand models, pushing the little buttons like Apple CarPlay,
That's awesome.
Connect, Bluetooth. And then we'd show all the other cool, stuff that I think it was the Chevy Volt when it came out. That was like the new big thing back then. So I was just floating around doing whatever I could, and the MLive job, that came around, and I just took it. And then I dove into the world of journalism, which I never, ever, ever thought I would be into that. It's totally different than my corporate video background. You have to pivot and shift and be able to think on your toes, and you're in very uncomfortable situations when someone's talking to you about someone who just died, or, they're impacted by an environmental issue that's going on. So that really opened my eyes. And even now, the role I have at U of M, everyone in my department, except for a few, are all former journalists. So we all have that sort of common background. And it's really impacted me.
Yeah, journalists there's a strange, very like a kinship to filmmaking. Like a lot of them are filmmakers at heart, right? They just have such a like a pull to nobility. They want to like be truthful. They want to tell true stories. It's very interesting. I mean, that's something that with what you've done with your career, I find it fascinating because you're still a creative. So long-term wise, is this something that you want to continue doing? You want to continue in the documentary-esque, or would you want to go back into like narrative?
I mean, what I do isn't documentary work. That's just few and far between, depending on the story.
Okay.
Just to be clear.
Well, okay, what is the correct term for what you do then?
Well, I mean, I'm a multimedia producer because on my team, I'm the only video guy. So I'm in charge of filming and editing, lighting, everything. We have a very small team. So we have a motion graphics person full-time, and we have like a web designer. So it's up to me to make these stories work. And sometimes they are little mini documentaries, but most of the time they're not. A lot of times they're on research that's coming out of the university. Last year, I got to film the United States' most powerful laser that's housed at the U of M engineering.
Holy cow.
It's a giant room. You don't get to see the laser, though.
Well,
It's the
hopefully not.
most difficult. Well, you'd think there'd be like a camera in there or something. Like, I want to see it. But it's not. It's just like this giant black box that stretches on for like, I don't know, it's big. So I get to cover stuff like that. And then I also get to, I have a series that I've taken over called Michigan Stories. And I go around the state showing the impact of University of Michigan. So sometimes that could be fun, happy stories. Other times it's stories where, you know, like elementary school teachers are trained how to spot trauma with kids and how to identify that and not, you know, get after them for acting up in class. You know, why is this student always acting up? Well, it may not be because, you know, they just don't want to learn. They could have trauma in their life. And so we cover a range of different issues, you know, that U of M has an impact on.
You know, something that you just said there that I think is worth noting is when it comes to filmmaking, like there is like Hollywood, but there's also like this whole avenue of storytelling that people love that we're able to tap into, largely because of the technology that's accessible to us now. Like that's fascinating. Like being able to go out and document that and show people like, hey, there's this story out there where teachers are taught this because of how important it is and how there has to be that level of empathy in the classroom. Like that's a wonderful, I mean, that's something I would watch. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, right? I love learning. So, I mean, there's lots of that. Again, it goes back to like what you sent me. You did like the bottle bill. I had no idea about that. So like there's something about being able to take a camera and tell a story. The thing that you do very well is also you make them fairly like bite-sized.
Yeah, you have to. Our people's attention span is garbage.
So can you walk me through like what that process is going into the editing? Because I'm assuming you shoot a lot more than you
Oh, yeah.
Put
I
together.
mean, I could make these 5-7 minutes easy, but, you know, you want them consumable. Let's face it, they're watching them on their phone.
Yeah. So
Most people are going to watch it on their phone.
what is the like? Where's your mind at when you're editing and cutting things out? Like, how do you hyper
2 minute.
focus?
That's like the number you got to keep in your head for me is it has to be around 2 minutes. You know, like for instance, one story I just did a few months ago is I went to Negaunee, Michigan, which is you know, the UP.
Sounds like something out of Narnia.
I know. That's not Narnia though. And the story was about a UP student at U of M who got a grant or a scholarship, I mean, and just kind of told her story of how she wouldn't have been able to from someone from the UP to make it all the way down and live, you know, in Ann Arbor and go to the university. And so I traveled all the way there, filmed a ton of stuff, and then I had to wait until she graduated. And so I had to wait till graduation day to get that, you know, perfect shot of her sitting there, like throwing up her cap and everything. And it's like 1 minute and 40 seconds. So how much
awesome.
time and energy and everything goes into these, you know, but that's what it takes to tell a story. You know, you can tell stories very simply. Everyone has a phone. You could go around and make some crazy documentary around your house, you know, if you really wanted to. And that's all it takes. It's just creativity, it's time, it's everything.
Has doing all this, made you more creative in your opinion?
I wish I was more creative in the sense that because I do this full time, it's very hard to do creative stuff on the side. Like, I would love to do short films again and do something like that. But when you shoot and edit all day long, 9 to 5, like I do, which I'm grateful, don't get me wrong, it's very exhausting to pick up, that script that you've been writing
Assuming
on.
it's tedious, right?
It's tedious, You've seen my sketch comedy that I do on the side when I can. That's something I love doing. But
it's a very different tone. Like I'm watching the Bottle Bill, I'm watching the PFAS, and then like I cut to, it's like a sock puppet, and I'm like,
actually, it's an oven mitt.
oh my God.
It's just so
my apologies. And I'm like, yeah, it's got googly eyes. It's like the whole package. I'm like, I can see it is that if there's one thing on the end of the spectrum, there must be the other, right?
Yeah.
It's balance.
That all came about because of the pandemic. I wasn't going to work anymore. I was working from home. And I don't even know how that came about, but found an old oven mitt and put some googly eyes on it, and he was against the coronavirus. Like, that's what every episode was about. And then finally the pandemic ended, and then I had to think of, all right, what's another fun, creative way that I could still keep Billy around?
So I guess then with all this, one thing I wanted you to break down more for me is you work for the University of Michigan currently, and you're a part of a team, and you're the video guy. When you're getting projects, is it from the top down? Are they giving you assignments, or is the majority of what you guys do looking for stuff that you can make content out of?
It's all of that. So, for instance, with the election coming up, we're doing like one election video with, experts and professors and stuff in our studio to crank that out, because we're constantly getting bombarded, our department, from external media. We're also the face for external media, so we deal with a lot of CNN, NPR, you name it. They come to us and say, hey, I'm doing a piece. It's due 2:00 today. Who can I talk to? And our team is the people who represent, a professor in law or something who can give a statement about a current news topic. So there's that aspect where it can be breaking news. And then there's also, the impact of U of M, and then there's research. So I might be talking to one of the writers, and they say, hey, I think I got this really cool, story that will have great visual elements. For me, it has to have visual elements. So that can be hard to tell. And that's why we have a full-time animator, is because sometimes you need animation to tell the story. Video cannot tell your story in space and a telescope flying by.
That's interesting. Yeah. So it's like a lot of these things I see on like Instagram and YouTube. It's always like, I'm always fascinated by how they have like such cool animation and infographics. So you have to have a dedicated animator.
Well, we choose to, because we can get a lot more information and content out that way. Because those are a lot more consumable.
What are the turnarounds like for that kind of work?
He's got a totally different beat, so I don't know what.
No, I mean, like in general, when you get like an assignment and you have to make the project and get the project done, like what was the turnarounds? Like what usually is like your deadlines from when you get the project?
Hopefully I can get to it within like 2 weeks, but it just depends, because, we have a studio, so like we had an interview in there yesterday, and then I had to teach a class on AI, and then I had to edit, and then I had to do something else. So sometimes I could sit on it for a month or 2 months. It just depends. Other times I have to get it done in a day. So you just got to roll with the punches, and
You said you teach AI?
I was teaching a few people about using GPT. U of M has its own GPT.
Interesting.
So the university is very forward-leaning and said, what, kids are going to be using OpenAI, ChatGPT. Why not create our own where we can control it and keep it safe and not, have it harm the students?
That's fascinating. Okay, so are you part of the the team that's making the ChatGPT?
No. No, this is just something that every student, faculty, and staff has access to. And so I have utilized it in my work.
Does it operate the same as ChatGPT?
It's a little different, but it's pretty much the same thing. In fact, the people who have created it, they offer, they'll have little workshop seminars about how to do prompting. And it's all about prompting.
Okay, can you walk me through that real quick?
Sure. So because I also use Midjourney a lot, I'll use Midjourney to create like still images for B-roll. Sometimes I need B-roll of a internal or like the inside of a hospital hallway. Yeah, I could go and find that on some site and pay money for it, or I could work for maybe a half an hour and really refine that prompt and get the exact image I want. So prompting is you have to identify what you want to get out of it, which sounds obvious. But before that, you have to tell who you are. So, for instance, when I sent my bio over, I said I wanted to have AI just look it over, give it a quick little check. So I just said, I'm doing an interview on a podcast, and I need to give them my bio. That sets the tone and context to AI. Okay, this is where it's going. Whereas if you just said, rewrite this and make it sound better, it's a weird structure that I didn't know because these things aren't really taught. Like you can go on YouTube and find a bunch of tutorials that are going to tell you, oh, you should do this, you should do that. But to have it in a structured setting where you're watching like PowerPoint presentations and you're like, oh, that I can understand because you've broken it down in a logical way, and I'm not just watching a YouTube video and keep hitting rewind like, what did you say? What did you say? Okay, let me write that. So prompting is very tedious, and the more detail you give, and you have to say what results you want, because sometimes it'll produce this mass amount of text, but it'll number it for some reason. And you're like, I didn't ask you to put numbers on there. Like, then you have to say, remove the numbers, and then it spits it out, remove the numbers.
There's a lot of apprehension when it comes to AI right now. There's a lot of like push against the grain. Not everyone's keen on it. And there's a lot of like purists, people who don't want to involve it at all. I've met a lot of these people. I'm friends with a lot of these people. Sorry, it's very pretty. They just are kind of hell-bent on if AI is involved in any part of the process of creative work, it like taints the creative work. I would like to know what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, I get where they're coming from. I understand it. A quote that I keep telling people is, AI is not going to take your job. It's not going to replace you. But the person who knows how to use it is. AI is here. You can use it, and you cannot have it take over your creative control, your creative power, if you will. I use AI in a very minimal way. Like, for instance, I did a video. It was they did a research paper that came out that found out that if your last name is lower on the alphabet, most likely you're going to get a lower grade because of that. And they have all this research, right? So my job was I interviewed 3 experts, from U of M, and I'm like, what am I going to use for B-roll? They're talking about grades. What do you do? Like film a bunch of like books, or like what do you do? So I thought of a way AI can help me. So what I did, I had AI create a 50 name list, and it did it all in alphabetical order, and I didn't want that. I wanted it a little bit jumbled because I didn't want it to have, and the names were ridiculous. So I'm like, no, switch that, switch it up. So they did all that, but then they put all the numbers. I'm like, remove the numbers. So then I finally had a nice list of 50 students. And then I had to find a way to make grades to show this is what this student who had a W as a last, first letter versus someone who had an F, And so I wasn't going to go in there and do 50 different, oh, this person got a 3.2, this person got a da-da-da. I just had AI generate a list, and I gave it very specific prompt instructions, and it generated a GPA list for me. I put it in a Word doc, and I put an overlay with that list, scrolling down on the video, And I also used AI to create a classroom, even though I could have just walked down on campus and filmed an empty classroom.
Too much effort.
I did it all from my desk. Now, yeah, was that lazy? I don't know. Was that also
Smart.
creative and finding a way to use AI without having it, destroy my creative process? No. Like, if you use it as a heavy lifter, then I don't see any problem with that. If you're using it to replace, like, we have a team of writers. I work with all writers. They're very, very apprehensive. That's actually who I was talking to at work. And so I'm like, look, you guys can still use this without having it write your stuff. Like, it won't. And honestly, you can tell when it's being written. It's written very poorly. It's very over the top a lot of the times. And so you just have to find a creative way to use it. Right now, Adobe Premiere uses text-based editing, and that has been a crucial time saver for me. So that's AI.
I'm not familiar. I'm sorry. Can you
That's fine.
explain that to me?
So right now in Premiere, when you import, say, an interview, it will automatically generate a transcript. And so you can click on that transcript, and you can read it like you would normally just read text, and it will move the playhead on the editing timeline. So I don't have to listen to the entire interview. I can now read it, and I can highlight, delete, and it'll delete it off the timeline. Which seems like, why didn't they do this, 10, 20 years ago? It seems very obvious, but no, you need AI to generate all those algorithms and whatever else it takes to do that.
You can just highlight a sentence.
Yeah, you can just highlight a sentence, cut it, gone. Wow. And you can search.
That's
Like, okay, what's that guy's name? Okay, here it is, and it'll list it. And so you can just hop between that search keyword. You can also eliminate all the ums and pauses. So,
dude,
that has really, really saved me time. And you know what the best part is? I don't have to wear damn headphones.
Yeah, I may have to stop.
I don't edit with headphones anyways. I refuse to do that. I stopped doing that years ago.
I may have to stop editing this show on DaVinci. I may have to jump to Premiere.
No. In fact, so I do a podcast, and I thought, I'm going to try it on Audition. That was awful.
Audition? I'm not familiar with Audition.
That's their audio version. That's their audio program.
On
Adobe products.
Okay, so they have it's called Audition.
Yes.
Gotcha.
You can do, multi-track recording, all that stuff.
Fascinating.
And then I'm like, what am I doing? Put this in Premiere, and I can just edit the script.
So, I use DaVinci, and I like DaVinci.
I've never used DaVinci.
Thankfully, the show doesn't require a ton of editing. It's all done by Jay over there. He's the real hero. There you go, a little wave. It's mostly, he does it live. It's all like switch, and we save it and record it as is. And then I'll throw like a header on at the beginning and the end, right? And I do a little color grade. I'll spruce us up so we look a little spicier. But other than that, like, it doesn't take much more. And I'm kind of happy with that. But there are times where a guest will say something like, hey, my agent will be upset if I say that. Can I get that taken out or something? I'm like, if I have that, I have to listen to the episode to find it.
Yeah.
Right? If I might have to jump to Premiere just for that one feature.
That feature alone is awesome. There's times where I'm recording a podcast because I'm just the audio engineer for that. I'm editing because I don't have to listen to it.
That's crazy. What, live?
Well, I mean,
okay,
I'm that guy, and I have my laptop, and I can still edit a little bit because I can just read it. I don't have to listen to it.
That's fascinating. No, I mean, I may very well be convinced to do just
when it comes to like AI, it's not going anywhere. It's only going to get more powerful, which is also dangerous. So it's up to the user, to, are you going to have any kind of morality or ethics to it? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to level with you. I love AI. I'm a big AI fan. And I haven't even used it as much as like you have. Like I haven't used like Midjourney. I haven't used like the more powerful tools. I've got the most basic ChatGPT that you can get, the free version with like the app on my phone. I'll ask it advice on day-to-day tasks. Like I'll ask it for like things, and especially creatively, what I love about it. I am also a little hypocritical because I'm currently writing a screenplay, and I will not involve ChatGPT in that, at least until I get my rough draft completed.
Yeah, that I wouldn't.
right? Because it's like,
I don't see a reason for AI to really be involved with that unless you just want a second. You could have a second pair of eyes.
correct. I
know?
have a very good friend who has this piece of advice. He says that if you're in a situation where you don't know how to get to the Death Star, and you ask ChatGPT, what's ways I can get to the Death Star? He says he doesn't see why that's an issue in a screenplay. If you need to figure out the between A and B, and I think that's interesting. For me personally, I think I just have to get through a draft on my own. I do need to pull it from within, and then from there I can be like, why is this not working? And then I can trial and error it. But what I love about AI is when it comes to filmmaking, there's a lot of stuff that there's a guy who was on here. Please remind me of his name. He was one of our earlier guests. His second episode, the guy who did The Chosen.
Oh, Jeff.
Jeff Stabler. Thank you. Jeff Stabler's done a lot of AI. And forgive me, Jeff. I didn't mean to forget your name. Yeah, I know you're probably listening to this. He was a great guest, but he worked with a lot of AI. And he said, like, using AI for the way he sees the future of filmmaking going is they're probably going to use it for all the organizational stuff, call sheets, and all that. I'm like, dude,
That's what I mean. It's heavy lifting. It can do the tedious work.
and streamline everything.
You still have to have your hand on the throttle, though. You still have to be in control of it because, I'm sure you've seen headlines where, some lawyer used AI to write I think it was their opening statement. I don't know what they did, but some lawyer used AI and it was like obviously threw the whole court, out of whack because it was completely false and made up. So you can't just say, hey, do this for me. It's not there yet.
Correct. Like you said, you shouldn't use it to replace. You should just use it like intermittently, help you get from point A to point B.
So one last example I'll use for workflow. I wanted to do a test. And so I did an A/B test. So I had my rough cut, which was like maybe a minute and a half long of an interview, just the interview, no B-roll. And it took a long while, but I had AI create using the transcript and time code to select what it thought would be the most important parts of this like 4-minute interview. And I put it together and I showed it to my coworkers. They're like, well, we can obviously tell which one was AI because it was crap. It wasn't that good. It made sense. Theirs was sort of all over the place, but 2 of the sound bites that it came up with, I used. So I was like, oh, I forgot about that. I should use it.
Interesting.
So down the road, I think it's going to be able to do that with specific prompting. It's all about having your hand on the wheel. I think there's going to be a time when you can maybe using transcripts and, whatever other methods are going to be available in the future, that it can significantly minimize, your editing time.
Dude, here's a good example. Spotify. We post video of the podcast to Spotify. If you do that, Spotify has this feature where when you go to share and you want to share to Instagram, you can share just the thumbnail for the episode, but there's no audio. So it's just this like soundless thumbnail. It's very sad. However, they've just recently added a feature where if you swipe over, you can share an excerpt from the podcast. And I've loved this because it doesn't let you select which excerpt. It just, I guess, picks a random part. And all the parts it's picked for all the episodes that I've advertised using that feature, which I think is about 4 in total now, it chooses great excerpts that catch like the personality of the guest, catch the kind of information we're covering. I'm like, oh, this is rad. And, I don't want to call myself lazy, but as a filmmaker, like I just want to be creative. And what bogs me down is like the hard stuff in between. It's the grunt work. And if AI is going to kill the grunt work for me, like I'm all for it. I'm like, I have the discipline. Like I can sit and write a screenplay by myself. That's fine. But like when it comes to then, how do I market the screenplay? Bro, like I need some AI assistance now. Like and if people want to be noble about it and say, no, I want to do it all myself, I think that's good too. We need more Christopher Nolans. But I'm comfortable with like, there's a lot of like this bogged down stuff where I'm like, if the AI can help us, we need to utilize that. We've essentially created this essence, this being, right? It can help us. I'm doubtful that we're going to get Skynet anytime soon.
No, I asked, I was at a workshop one time and they had this AI expert who does like, I don't know, he has all this crazy government clearance, and I raised my hand in front of everyone. I'm like, is there a ghost in the shell? And he said, no, it's too stupid right now.
Yeah, for now.
For now. He's like, no, that's not going to happen for a long time. But still.
Yeah.
And that's what this video was all about. That's what it addressed is, AI right now is biased because of it's gathering all our news and everything information. And, you can look at the video and go from there. But it was very eye-opening. I did 2 videos on this. This was a side project last summer. When you work at a university, the summers are very slow because students are gone. A lot of professors leave for the whole summer. So this was a great project. I teamed up with the AI lab, which is actually like 50 years old in University of Michigan. And the professors that were available really opened my eyes. And it took forever for me to even understand what AI is, because I was asking them, like, how do I show it on the screen? What do I show? And they're like, well, it's just code. I'm like, well, I know, but I can't just show code. I can't just show, they referred me as, I guess it's called Python code. So I actually used AI to create Python code, and I have that scrolling once or twice in the video. But that's where I got into Midjourney.
Was that the beginning of your video? Like that code that ran across the screen?
That's actually just a plugin.
Okay.
On that one. But I really dove into Midjourney because I had to come up with a creative way to show AI. And, let's face it, you want to see something cool and like Terminator-like or Matrix-like, something. So that's why if you look at the video, there's a lot of those images in there. And it was fun just going down that rabbit hole. The one thing that none of the professors would say on camera was, Terminator. Because I was like, I got to get one of them to just say Skynet or Terminator. And they're like, no, not going to say it.
They don't want to be the person.
But I was able to get them close enough to say it. And I generated the closest like Terminator endoskeleton that I could on Midjourney possible. And I put it in the video. So.
And that's why we need creatives. People like you. We need that. I only have one more question for you.
Sure.
And that is, advice. A lot of this is just talking about AI and it's being new and how it's going to change things. What advice would you give people who are getting into filmmaking right now, whether they're young or not, and they're about to take this journey and how this can assist them? What advice would you have?
For AI to assist them?
Yeah, or just in general as a filmmaker.
I mean, in general, it's, it's a long haul. It's hard. It depends on where you live. It depends on how involved you want to be, As far as AI, the only thing I can say to people who either aren't using it or are hesitant to use it, like, just try it. Just see what you can do with it. Sometimes you can just create a recipe. Like, give me 5 recipes for whatever. Start from there. I don't want to tell filmmakers, like, you need to get involved in AI in order to be in film, because you don't. But, it's a tool. So if you don't use it at all, someone else is, and they're going to possibly get that job because they used it, and it didn't replace their creativity. Using AI, I don't think in certain ways, isn't a destructive, creative force. There's always going to be disinformation. There's always going to be, ways you can use it for really bad things. But as far as just a creative outlet from what I do, that's just not there.
Jeremy, I appreciate you coming in today, sir.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. May I?
Yeah.
Yes. I had to. I'm sorry. All right, guys. That was Let's Talk Motion Picture. That's beautiful.
All right.
This podcast is brought to you by Motion Picture Institute, a film school located in Troy, Michigan. If you'd like to know more about our extensive 1-year filmmaking program, please check out the website at motionpicture.edu and schedule a tour today.